Hello?
Hello?
Yo, bro, I'm looking for new VR games to play. Do you have any recommendations?
I'd say Adam Rivals.
It's not really my style, but is that your favorite game?
Yeah, I really like that game. It's pretty cool. What's your favorite game?
My favorite game is Contractor Showdown Battle Royale.
What game is that?
VR battle royale shooter known as Contractors Showdown.
Contractor Showdown.
Feels like Warzone, it looks like Warzone.
Contractors Showdown.
Hello and welcome back to Contractors Showdown.
Contractor Showdown. Contractor Showdown is such an incredible game.
There was a time when Contractor Showdown felt like the future of VR. People were calling it Call of Duty Warzone, but in VR. Creators were making videos about it, players were filling massive lobbies, and for a while, it felt like VR had finally gotten its own version of the biggest battle royale in gaming. You could squad up with your friends, jump into a massive map, loot, fight, and somehow end up in a completely different situation every single match. But then, something changed. The lobbies got quieter, the videos became less common, and the game that once felt like it was everywhere started disappearing from the conversation. So how did a game with so much potential become the VR game everybody forgot about? To understand why Contractor Showdown was such a big deal, you have to go back to before it existed. VR already had a battle royale, Population 1, and for a long time, it was basically the biggest name in VR battle royale. But Population 1 had a very different style. It was colorful, arcade-like, and built around climbing and gliding across the map. Then Contractor Showdown got announced, and it immediately looked different. This wasn't trying to look like Fortnite, it wasn't trying to look cartoonish. It looked more like the massive shooters people were already playing on console and PC, and that led to a comparison that followed the game everywhere. Call of Duty Warzone, but in VR. Even before launch, people were making videos calling Contractor Showdown Warzone VR, and honestly, it was easy to see why. A huge map, squads, loot, vehicles, a shrinking zone, and eventually one team left standing. But there was one number that really showed how ambitious this game was. 60 players. At the time, that was enormous for a standalone VR battle royale. Population 1 supported 20 players. Contractor Showdown was going for 3 times that number, and the map, 16 square kilometers. For VR, this was huge, and that was the appeal. This wasn't supposed to feel like a small VR experiment. It was supposed to feel like a real battle royale. But the scale wasn't the only thing that made Showdown work. It was the feeling, because this wasn't a normal shooter. You weren't just controlling a character, you were physically doing everything. You had to aim, move, reload, react. And when someone suddenly appeared around the corner, you didn't have time to think, you just reacted. Never do that again. That's what made the game feel so immersive. It didn't feel like you were watching someone play a battle royale. You feel like you were inside one. And there was chaos. You could spend several minutes looting, hear nothing, and suddenly, you've got an entire squad fighting you. That's what made every match memorable. You weren't just playing a game, you were playing a VR game that genuinely felt fun to play every time you logged on. This is the part that's difficult to explain to someone who never played it. Because looking at the game today, you might just see another old VR shooter. But when Showdown was at its peak, it felt alive. You could hear gunfire in the distance. You'd run into other squads constantly. You would hear people talking to proximity chat, and you never knew what was gonna happen next. That's something multiplayer games can't manufacture with graphics. It comes from the players, and Contractor Showdown had them for a while. It genuinely felt like VR had gotten a game where it was unique and made for everyone. Eventually, the momentum started disappearing in less than a year, and we can actually see part of that decline. On Steam, Contractor Showdown reached a monthly peak of roughly 580 concurrent players in April 2024. By June, that number was around 197. July 159, August 117, and by November just 38 players. Now there's an important caveat. These are Steam numbers only. The majority of the game's players were on VR platforms outside of Steam, particularly Quest, so these numbers do not represent the entire player base, but they still show something important. The momentum of Steam was collapsing, and for a battle royale, that's dangerous. Because multiplayer games have a problem, a single player game can survive with one person playing it. A battle royale can't. When fewer people play, matches become harder to fill. When matches become harder to fill, the game becomes less exciting. And when the game becomes less exciting, people leave. It's a chain reaction. Fewer players, longer waits, less action, more players leave. And suddenly, the game that once felt packed starts feeling empty. But the biggest problem wasn't necessarily that Contractor Showdown become a bad game. It was that people stopped talking about it. The videos became less common, creators moved on, players found other games, and new VR players had less reason to discover Showdown. That's how multiplayer games disappeared. Not always with one massive failure. Sometimes they just get quieter. And eventually, the game becomes something only the people who were there remember. That's what makes Contractor Showdown different. It wasn't some random game nobody cared about. People really care about this game, including myself. That's why I'm making this video. What makes this story even more interesting is what happened next. Instead of fully doubling down on fixing and expanding Contractor Showdown, the developers started shifting their focus toward a new direction entirely. A new project. A new extraction style VR shooter that would eventually become Exfil Zone. And slowly, updates, attention, and development energy began moving away from Showdown. Not in one dramatic shutdown, but in a quiet transition. The kind where a game doesn't die instantly, it just stops being the main priority. And when that happens in multiplayer games, players feel it before it's ever officially said. Less communication, fewer big updates, and a community that starts to wonder if the game they love is still the game the developers are focused on. So in a way, what we are really remembering isn't just a game that faded, it's a game that was slowly left behind, as something new was being built in its place. Honestly, making this video was kind of sad for me. I never felt this way about a game before, and the fact that a VR game could make me miss it this much, to the point where talking about what happened to it actually makes me sad. I think that says a lot about how special this game was to me, because when you look at the VR store today, there's so much stuff that just feels like it's trying to copy whatever is popular. A lot of it is just Gorilla Tag slop. And then you look at Contractor Showdown and realize how different it felt. It was like a real game. A game I could actually get excited to play. A game I could spend hours in with my friends and still wanted to come back the next day. And that's what makes this so frustrating, because this wasn't some game I played once and forgot about. And honestly, Contractor Showdown was also one of the first games I ever made videos about on this channel. So coming back to it now and making a whole video about what happened to it feels kinda weird, because I'm not looking at this game from the outside. I was there. I remember what it felt like when this game was alive. I remember playing it. I remember making videos about it, and I remember how much I loved it. So watching it all fade away so quickly sucks. I know most people watching this probably don't know who I am. I'm not some huge YouTuber. And realistically, I know a lot of you don't even care that much about this game, and that's okay. But I still wanted to make this video because I wanted people to know that there is still someone who wants this game alive. Even if bringing it back seems impossible, even if the community is gone, even if everybody else has moved on, I still want it back, because I've never missed a game like this before. And maybe that's why making this video was so difficult. I'm not talking about some random game that came and went. I'm talking about a game that gave me some of my memories in VR. A game that, for a while, felt like everyone was finally connected to their own VR game. And I know games come and go, I know people move on, but I still wish Contractor Showdown had gotten the chance to become what it felt like it was going to become. Because for a little while, this was my favorite game, and I really miss it. Maybe that's why Contractor Showdown isn't really the VR game that everybody forgot about. It's the VR game I wish I could go back to.